media as a reporting tool? Or
well, here's the problem is Facebook came first, at least in terms of who was using it more, and it sort of taught us how to be social mediaites, if you will. And of course, as we all know, on Facebook, it's a place where you can go and you talk about all of what's going on in your personal life and your personal thoughts and personal views. And so then when we all got hold of Twitter, we forgot that it's not really like Facebook. And that's where you get into your problem. So for me personally, on my Facebook page, I do not allow most people outside of my family and friends anywhere near the page, and you can do that. People that I work with, or various politicos, they're out. They don't get to see. In the event that somebody does post something political on my site or on my own page that could somehow get me in trouble, which doesn't happen, but it could, and we all need to be viewed as being objective, and that's certainly our goal. And so, but that's the thing, when it carries over into Twitter, then I think Liz was talking about it. You really do have to be careful not to be putting too much of your own view or own thoughts or just your own personal life material out there, because there is no filter, and it's much more difficult to control who is seeing what you said. And once it's out there, it can be very problematic. I mean, a good friend of mine who's a sports reporter in the Cleveland area, and who's been, he's been a leader in the industry for a couple decades. No longer works at the paper because of a mistake he made on Twitter. I mean, we're talking a Hall of Fame caliber writer who no longer works there because of something that happened on Twitter. So that is the danger, and I think that's one of the things that Liz was talking about, and I totally agree with that.
Well, thank you for that, but I want to take issue with something you said. I struggle with this because you said that I think the social media and Twitter, this is all good for us, and I don't agree with that. I think
I knew that.
I'm sure you knew. I think there's a whole host of bad that comes with this, and the only point I'll make on this, because I could go on and on about why I don't think that it is a good thing for American journalism, is what it's done to our young reporters. I believe, as an editor now, I see it. We have a good team, but we have a green team, and I have a lot of reporters in their 20s who are so focused on the tweeting and blogging and doing all the bells and whistles, right? All the things that they're expected to do, not just at the AP but everywhere. They're expected in the world of political journalism to do all these things and be on TV and do this and do that, because we're now all supposed to be multi-platform journalists, that they're so preoccupied with that kind of stuff that I worry, and it keeps me up at night, I worry that our young political journalists, our up and coming, our stars of tomorrow, aren't learning how to do basic shoe leather reporting anymore. They're so focused on Twitter. You guys know this. You guys know Facebook, Twitter, social networking. It's all a time suck. You can sit on your couch for hours and go through this, or you're constantly looking down at your phone, looking at Twitter and posting tweets instead of actually watching what's going on at an event and being what we're supposed to be, which is trained observers, and learning how to be trained observers. And on a constant basis, it's my staff is just, they get annoyed with me telling them, I'm like, stop tweeting, just stop tweeting, and let's go pick up the phone instead of using email, talk to sources, and let's get back to the basics of learning how to be good reporters. The only way that we can do our job is to learn how to be good reporters and do the basics of journalism. And so I'm not convinced that social networking is a good thing for our industry. I think it takes our eye off the ball of what we're supposed to be doing, which is original reporting and being a trained observer. And with that, I'm going to get off my soapbox.
If anybody has anything to add, if not, I did promise you I would give you time to ask questions, and so unless somebody has...
I'll just make one minor point, because I think it's true what Liz is saying, is I'm 50, so I'm still old school. When I got into the business back in the early 80s, we didn't even have Nexus around, at least not at the Stanton Daily newsletter. in Virginia, and our editor used to say, you know, we need to go out and talk to some voters, you know, and say you got to go down to the post office, or you got to go to the DMV, because that's where all people deliver mail or send letters, and everyone has to get their driver's license. You know, so I'd always truck down there with my pen and pad, but you'd always get a cross section of people, and you'd actually talk to real people, and if you listened well enough, you'd get a story, or at least add to the story you're doing, especially in politics.
Well, I'm just going to say briefly, I think that he's proof that you could. So I think it's a valid, but here we have proof of somebody who's
It's a balance.
obviously balancing both things, and it's a great cautionary tale because I think we're all struggling with it. And I want to open it up really to you guys to see if anybody has questions for the panel while you've got them here. This is a lot of collective knowledge in one place.
I just want to ask about political advertising in Florida and Ohio. Still pouring in, but a waste of money except for the windfall for TV stations, or is it possibly going to have an effect?
Well, I think in Ohio, I think it may have, it may actually be what wins the election for the president. And of course, we all know, I think a lot of us have agreed that TV advertising primarily was how Governor Romney was able to get through the primary season. And the way it's won that the president has won is that he way outspent Romney over the summer in Ohio, just crushing him on taxes and Bain. And it set this narrative about who Governor Romney is, whether it's entirely true or not. But I mean, it set that narrative, and so then it caused Governor Romney to have his whole convention around trying to say, well, actually, that's not who I am. And now he's still stuck in that mode of that's kind of how voters view who he is, and it's all because of this glut of in my opinion, brilliant TV advertising by the president's campaign in June, July, and August.
Yeah, in Florida, I mean, I think the ads, they wouldn't spend the money if it wasn't effective, and we have had thousands and thousands of ads. In fact, sitting in my hotel room here, I'm amazed there's nothing on television, because in Florida,
Isn't it
it's
nice?
all over. Very different. You can actually watch a show and not be run, But it's going to be effective for them. And what we found is when we do talk to the real voters, you hear them echoing what they heard in an ad, even though they think it's their own original thought. But you do hear a lot of that. So, again, the advertising is they're selling a product just like McDonald's or Apple for that matter. So if they recite part of the jingle, then it must be working.
Well, Liz, if you come home this weekend and you're watching the Browns-Bills game, you will not believe the amount of political advertising in between commercials.
I don't intend to step into anywhere but my office in D.C. through November 6th.
I just wondered your thoughts about when you're talking about Twitter and controlling the narrative, and how much of that is, how much a part of that is controlling the narrative of who the media are, that you can't trust the media, that we're the truth tellers because we're direct, to you, the people, and that the Associated Press is biased and is too liberal, or the newspaper is biased and too liberal. How much of that do you see playing out in that attempt to control the narrative by the political campaigns, or,
well, again,
or in the other direction?
It's an issue that's been around forever, but again, the explosion of media outlets, very broadly used has made it much more complicated. I've kind of given up this whole notion of trying to convince people that, they talk about the media and they throw in Sean Hannity and Rachel Maddow and just, crazy, just, and there's almost no point in arguing it anymore. You can just do the best job that you can as the Associated Press or the Miami Herald or the Columbus Dispatch or what have you to just put out the highest quality content that you possibly can, and then you just have to let the chips fall. And one thing that we're doing, and a lot of other outlets are doing more and more, and I think we're doing. I know AP does an outstanding job, and so do a lot of other places. And this is the fact checking, and you have PolitiFact, and a lot of newspapers are doing this independently. And sometimes you put a lot of effort into that, and you do you'll see a terrific fact check, and then you'll just the very next day you think, well, boy, we really set them straight on that, and the very next day the politician is just telling the exact same lie, you know, just blatantly, you know, and they'll almost laugh at you, you know, they'll say, you know, who reads fact checks, you know, you're not, you know, we don't care, voters don't care. There's some truth to that. What else can we do but just keep doing the best that we can, and you know, the people that say the AP is biased or whatever, I mean, if they're reasonable people, I'll try to engage in a civil conversation with them, but you know, your work has to stand for itself, and there's just all kinds of crazy stuff out there. And if you tried to answer every piece of hate mail you got, that's all you'd ever do.
I have a quick follow-up to that. There's a new Gallup poll out that says Americans' distrust in the media hit a new high this year, with 60% saying they have little or no trust in the mass media to report the news fully, accurately, or fairly. And also as part of this, and Joe, I think you saw this, 39% say that they're paying close attention to the political coverage. So, Liz, you hit on this a little bit yesterday, talking about the fact-checking and how, as good as it is and as much of it is going on, it seems to be somewhat irrelevant to the voters. And now we see this poll. So I'm wondering, one thing I don't see in this report is a roadmap to getting the media back on track in the voters' minds. So I'll ask you, how do we do this?
So this is a question we deal with literally every day at the AP. I mean, there's something that comes up, and it's, okay, our MO to restoring confidence is what I think you're talking about. Restoring confidence in the public about the work that we do is, for me, the mantra is, let's go back to the basics. Let's go back to what you know, made us credible in voters' eyes to begin with, in Americans' eyes, and that is high standards, precision, accuracy, and then swiftness. And you know, the order of those things used to get kind of, sometimes with the way the Twitter and the fast pace of 24/7 news coverage now has gone, I think sometimes, like everybody, we lose sight of that. We as an institution, as a media, as political reporters, as journalists, lose sight of that. And it's, you know, what do you value more, being fast or being right? And at the AP, it is a constant hammering on accuracy, precision, fact-based, real reported journalism, and going back to whenever we stray off course, and we do it, everyone strays off course at times, is going back to what our core mission is, and that's accountability. It is fact-based journalism that is accurate, precise, fair, balanced, and holding our politicians accountable. And I think if we can do that, and do that every single day, and keep our eye on that ball, and let the swiftness factor kind of fade away, if we're doing our jobs, being quick is ultimately going to happen. We will get there. I think it is going to take time, and it's going to take a concerted effort for everybody to kind of check the crap at the door and focus on what matters.
Well, I'd take that poll to mean that I've got a 40% approval rating, which would be an all-time high for me. But you know, I mean, the way you succeed, one of the ways you succeed on Twitter, it actually kind of goes back to something Liz was saying. It's like the more we disagree, we actually agree here, and it's about just being, you know, good at your job. And a great example of this is your reporter on the Romney beat, Cassie Hunt, who does an excellent job. And this was during the whole 47% thing, and she just tweets, you know, one of the groups of people who do not pay federal income tax are military, and I mean, because that's right. And of course, there was a conservative blowback on this, like, how can you say you don't know what you're talking about? And then she had to tweet again, well, I'm sorry, I didn't include a link for the information. Here it is. This is just a commonly accepted fact. And the point is, I mean, whether you're on Twitter or you're writing stories that have to be tighter, for whatever reason, you have to do the same amount of reporting. You have to always be able to back up what you're saying with facts. So, you know, and she did a good job of that.
I'm being told this has to be quick. So earlier this week, over here, Jon Stewart and Bill O'Reilly announced that they're going to host a debate streaming online. Do you guys think that will and should be covered? Because you have one guy who claims to be a journalist and one guy who still continues to claim that he's just a comedian. Do you think that will and should be covered as legitimate political discourse?
I'm going to go last, you guys.
You want to punt it to the editors?
We just made our decision on this, so go
I mean,
ahead.
I'm going to watch it, and I think it's going to get covered. It should get covered. These guys are media personalities. They are part of the dialogue, if you will. But, they held that rally back in Washington. I think Stewart and Colbert. A lot of people showed up. I mean, I would assume we'd run a story about it. Yes.
I'm not going to watch it, and I would have, if I were the assignment editor, I'd have the entertainment editor, entertainment reporter write something. But it's this whole problem, and it's part of the problem with the poll that you cited is the media. Well, if you throw in Rush Limbaugh and Jon Stewart and Bill O'Reilly, yeah, I guess they're part of the media, but it makes it very difficult for me to pull out useful information about what they're talking about, and I just no, I'm not gonna lose an hour of my life that God will not give back to me by watching that.
Did you want to finish this?
I'll catch the highlights of what they say on Twitter.
So I think what Stewart and Colbert and the rest of these guys have done is tapped into a deep and seething anger in the American public about the media, but not just about the media, about politics and the nexus between politics and the media. And it's fascinating to me the numbers who actually get their news from Stewart and Colbert.
Yeah.
The event last year was actually 4 years ago, was actually very striking on the mall. The mall was flooded with people. And it was people who liked the, truth to power. Yeah, it's okay, fine, it's shtick. It is. It's comedy, it's entertainment, fine. But there's also a point, at least putting Colbert aside, into what Jon Stewart is saying. He's saying the media needs to quit being wimps and call it like we see it, right? He does it with an edge. And there are a lot of people in America who appreciate that. Yes, I will watch it. I will watch it in the vein in which it's intended, which is satire. Well, with satire, you have a point. We're going to cover it. We're not going to devote a huge number of resources to it, but we selected a reporter who understands politics, gets the joke, and can write with the appropriate tone. We're not going to write a serious story about this debate, right? But we're going to write a tone that we're going to cover it with the right tone. We're not going to do 1,000 words on this, but we're going to do something because people are talking about it, right? It's the same reason why at a debate when there's the whole Michelle Bachmann's hair flares up, and everyone's talking about how big her hair was, right? And it's not just online that they're talking about it. It's like you go to the water cooler and people are like, what did she do with her hair, right? It's the same reason why we do something short with the right tone about her hair or John Edwards' hair, right? With the video, I think sometimes we forget that the campaigns are about personalities just as much as they're about big, weighty issues. And so I think, part of our context and challenge is, or part of our challenge is making sure the context and the tone is right about what we're covering.
Ladies and gentlemen, join me in thanking our panel.
Thank you,
Mindy,
guys.
great job.